Now I come to Sati Patana. Very often, or usually, people don't explain the difference between Sati and Sati Patana, but there is a difference between Sati and Sati Patana. Patana, from what I understand, comes from two words, pa and tana. Tana means position or a state. Pa means going forward. That's the literal meaning, but it also means going beyond. That means extreme or intense. So, Sati Patana can be translated as an extreme or intense state of Sati. Intense state of Sati is not ordinary Sati, a very intense state of Sati. And Sati and Sati Patana are very much related to Samadhi. In the suttas, the Buddha said, when we practice the Aryan Eightfold Path, we start with the first one, right view. And when we practice right view, it will lead us to the second one, right thoughts. And that will lead us to right speech, and that will lead us to right action. And in the end, Sati, when you practice Sati, it will lead you to Samadhi. So, if you practice Sati correctly, it will lead you to concentration, Samadhi. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that some people think that when you attain Jhana, perfect concentration, there is no Sati. This couldn't be further from the truth. In the suttas, when the Buddha explained the state of the fourth Jhana, the Buddha said that the state of the fourth Jhana is a state of perfect purity of Sati. Perfect purity of Sati. Sati is perfectly pure at the fourth Jhana. But even in the first Jhana, you already have quite pure Sati recollection. In fact, in the Majjhima Nikaya, it is stated that Sati Patana is a characteristic mark of Samadhi. In other words, Sati Patana is a characteristic mark of Jhana. When a person attains Jhana, it must be accompanied by Sati Patana, intense state of mindfulness. When your mindfulness or your recollection is so intense, then only it can bring you into Jhana, deep Samadhi. If your Sati is not intense, you will be distracted by external things. But because your Sati is so intense, is so focused, it will bring you into your mind. And when you go into your mind, you attain the state of Jhana, perfect Samadhi. By the way, when you attain Jhana, when a person attains Jhana, he goes deep into the mind, and slowly the external world fades away. Then you begin to go into another world, the world of the mind. And that is the way to leave the world. After all, our aim in meditation is to leave the world. So if you cannot go into your mind and leave the world, how can you escape from the world? Now, in one sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha said that when Sati Patana, after Sati Patana is attained, he told his disciples to abandon the practice of Sati Patana. After you have attained Sati Patana, abandon the practice. Yet, in another sutta, the Buddha said, all his Aryas constantly abide in Sati Patana. Constantly abide in Sati Patana. But after you have attained, you abandon the practice. In other words, if you have attained Sati Patana, if you have attained Jhana, then this Sati Patana stays with you. Intense state of mindfulness stays with you. That is why Sati Patana, if you attain Sati Patana, is equivalent to attaining Jhana. If you have not really attained Sati Patana, it means you have not attained Jhana, or vice versa. If you have not attained Jhana, you have also not attained Sati Patana. In another sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Venerable Anuruddha was one of the disciples of the Buddha. He had very great psychic power. He had such great psychic power that he could see the galaxy, many world systems, like in the palm of his hand. His mind expanded. You know, this arupa jhana is a state where the mind expands to boundless space or boundless consciousness. And because the mind is so wide, he could see world systems like in the palm of his hand so clearly. So the monks knew that he had such great psychic power. So they asked him, what did you cultivate that you attained such great psychic power? And Venerable Anuruddha said, Sati Patana. Normally, to attain psychic power, you must have jhana. If you don't have jhana, you cannot have psychic power. And yet, Venerable Anuruddha said Sati Patana. In other words, Sati Patana is equivalent to jhana. Nowadays, some monks don't say that, but that is according to the sutta. So, I summarize here again by saying that Sati Patana is a little different from Sati, in the sense that Sati Patana is an intense state of Sati, and Sati and Samadhi are very much related. Sati or Sati Patana is very much related to Samadhi, and in fact Sati Patana is equivalent to Jhana. Now, I'd like to continue here with some advice. If we want to practice meditation, and when we sit down to practice meditation, it is best to practice Samatha meditation, because Samatha meditation or Samadhi, you cannot practice in any other posture. To attain deep Samadhi, you can only sit down, and to attain deep Samadhi is difficult. So, if you don't attain Samadhi first, although you can practice Vipassana first, but if you keep on practicing Vipassana without Samatha, you'll find you have very much sloth and torpor and restlessness. So what happens, for example, when we meditate on the breath, you try to observe the breath going in and out, you have two problems. The first one is very difficult for the mind to stick with the breath. The mind will run and you think of your home. Did I close the window? Did I lock the door? Or you think of your work. And then you try to bring it back. And then the mind runs away again. So the first problem you have is restlessness, and you try to meditate. The second one is sloth and torpor. Because of sloth and torpor, when you try to see your breath, you cannot see it, you cannot focus, you cannot see your breath clearly because your mind is very muddled. That's not muddle-headed, they say. So you cannot focus and see your breath clearly. So these two things are part of the 5 hindrances. So because of that, if you try to practice Vipassana, you cannot obtain very deep insight because your mind is not clear. So if you want to attain deeper insight, you have to practice Samatha first. You can practice Vipassana first, but then you'll make slow progress. Now in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 108, the Venerable Ananda was asked, what type of meditation is approved by the Buddha? What type of meditation is not approved by the Buddha? And Venerable Ananda said, the type of meditation where the 5 hindrances are abandoned is approved by the Buddha. The type of meditation, the 5 hindrances are not abandoned, is not approved by the Buddha. So it's very clear here that the Buddha is always stressing on Samatha meditation. Because Samatha meditation is the one where you get rid of the 5 hindrances. Then only you can see very clearly. Now when you get rid of the 5 hindrances, you have a developed mind. That is what meditation is about. Sometimes the word for meditation is bhavana. Bhavana means development, which means principally development of the mind. That means you alter the state of your mind. You develop your mind so it becomes a different mind. It becomes a much clearer mind. Now when you have attained jhana, then the mind becomes so clear that even you listen to one sutta, you can become an arahant. This was the case when the Buddha went to convert 1,000 jatilas. Jatilas are matted hair ascetics. They kept their hair very long, And these people were very good meditators. They probably all attained jhana. So the Buddha thought, these are the right people to teach them the Dhamma, because their mind is very clear. So he went to convert them. First he converted the leader, then slowly they followed him. And then when 1,000 of them had followed him, had agreed to follow him, the Buddha delivered the Anatta Lakkhana discourse, the discourse on no self, or not self. So when the Buddha taught them this one discourse, 1,000 of them became arahants. You see? This just by listening to one discourse. But here we are listening to discourse after another, we never get enlightened. Yes or not? Because we are still muddle-headed. So you see how important the jhanas are. And sometimes people think that when you attain the jhana, only in the state of jhana, the hindrances are abandoned. After that, they come back again. Not true. Because when you attain the jhana, you have gone deep into your mind. And if you don't practice meditation, even if the hindrances come back, if you want to get rid of it, it is much easier, not like before. The first time you get rid of the 5 hindrances is very difficult. But after that, to get rid of them is not difficult. And this quality of having abandoned the 5 hindrances carries to your next life. This is quite clear from the suttas. There was a lay disciple of the Buddha, and he described how he was a rich man, man with a family. So he was a real a person who really enjoyed life. He used to get drunk much of the time. So one day when he was drunk and surrounded, in those days they had slaves and all this to enjoy themselves with. So he was drunk and the Buddha walked by, And when he saw the Buddha from a distance, due to karmic affinity, something struck him. It's as though sometimes, when we see somebody, we think we have seen this person before. Although this life you may not have seen that person, but perhaps in a previous life you have seen that person. So that person strikes you as very familiar. So too with this man. And he saw the Buddha from a distance. Something struck. And although he was drunk, that drunkenness all vanished. All vanished, incredible. And that could only have happened because he had already perfected his samadhi, his concentration in the previous life. So he was able to throw off the hindrances just in an instant. His mind he just sobered up instantly. And then he went to the Buddha and became a disciple of the Buddha, and the Buddha converted him. So that is the great advantage of the jhanas. Now, in the Digha Nikaya, there's one sutta where the Buddha said, if a teacher is able to teach jhana to his students, he is an altogether blameless teacher. A teacher, you can teach jhana to his disciples, is altogether blameless. But if a teacher teaches meditation, that's all. What I'm implying is that if a teacher teaches meditation without teaching jhana to his disciples, then he should be blameworthy. Because according to the Buddha, he's only blameless if he teaches jhana to his disciples. And the Buddha praised jhana in the suttas. The Buddha said there are 4 advantages of attaining jhana. 4 advantages of attaining and abiding in jhana. The 4 advantages are the first, second, third, and fourth fruition: Sotapanna, Sakadagamin, Anagamin, and Arahanthood. And in one sutta, the Buddha also said that if a person attains and abides in the first jhana itself, that person is already cooled, nibbutta, cooled. He has crossed over. Now these words, cooled and crossed over, are normally used for an arahant But the Buddha used it for the state of the first jhana, which shows that the Buddha had a high regard for jhanas. And why? Because these jhanas are actually halfway stations to Nibbana. Nibbana is a state where a person is totally cooled, or the mind is totally cooled, no more agitation. And when we practice and attain jhana, the mind is also very still, very, very still. And that is why I say that jhanas are halfway stations to Nibbana. And you find in the suttas that the Buddha and his Arahant disciples and even the other Arya disciples, they constantly abide in jhana. Even after they have attained Arahanthood, they still abide in jhana, because when you abide in jhana, you withdraw yourself from the world. And because your aim is to totally get out of the world, so it's only right that you withdraw yourself from the world, because the world is a place of dukkha. I would say that in the practice of meditation, samatha is the positive aspect and vipassana is the negative aspect. Why positive aspect? Because samatha, you are bringing yourself nearer to nibbana by calming your mind, by cooling your mind. And when you can totally cool your mind, that is the state of nibbana. And also the aim of meditation is to destroy the asavas. What are asavas? Asavas are uncontrolled mental outflows. For a normal person, the mind is always leaking, leaking. The literal meaning of asava is leakage, low in Chinese, leakage. So the mind is always leaking, leaking with consciousness, leaking with emotions, leaking with anger and all that. And when we meditate and practice samatha meditation, we are calming the mind. And when we calm the mind, all these leakages, in the state of jhana, these leakages of the mind stop. These asavas are temporarily ceased. So when you attain jhana, you temporarily stop the asavas from flowing. And that is the ultimate aim of meditation, to stop the asavas entirely from flowing. And if that is your aim, to stop the asavas, to destroy the asavas, if you cannot stop it temporarily, how can you attain the state of arahanthood, which is the state where the asavas are totally stopped? That is why the state of jhana is so important. And vipassana, I said, is the negative aspect. Why the negative aspect? Because in the practice of vipassana, we are contemplating the body and mind. And we are trying to see that it is not I, it is not mine, it is not myself. So it is the negative, saying this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. It's just like dana and sila. When we do good, there are two aspects, dana and sila. Dana is the positive aspect, positive good, benefiting somebody. Sila is the negative aspect, not harming somebody by keeping the precepts. So the same with samatha and vipassana. Samatha is the positive aspect where you bring your mind towards nibbana. Vipassana is the negative aspect where you try to see this body and this mind is not I, is not mine, is not myself. So I'll summarize here again by saying that in the practice of samatha, to attain jhana, we can only sit down. So when we sit down to meditate, it's best to practice samatha, because when you are not sitting down, you can practice vipassana. And if you make some progress in your meditation, your hindrances should subside. Your anger, your sensual desire should decrease. Your ego should also decrease. And when that happens, you slowly let go of your attachments. If you cannot let go of your attachments and your anger and your sensual desire and your ego, then you are not making progress in your meditation. And another thing, if you really make progress in your meditation, because your ego decreases, You have no desire to tell people of your attainments. But you find some people, they meditate, they think they attain this and that, they quickly want to tell people. And that is not a sign of attainment. That is a sign of not attaining. And the last thing I like to say is that right view is very important. In the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, the Aryan Eightfold Path, the first factor is right view. And that is the first thing you must attain. If you have not attained right view, you have not entered the Aryan Eightfold Path. And if you have not entered the Aryan Eightfold Path, it's no use practicing. You can practice for 20 years, you'll never progress. Actually, this happened to one lady in Penang a few years ago. She was a committee member of a meditation center in Penang. And I heard she had been practicing meditation for about 20 years. And she was a very good example of a good Buddhist. Every day she'll keep the 8 precepts. She'll wear white and keep the 8 precepts every day. And then during the school holidays, because she was a teacher, during the school holidays she'll shave her head and become a nun, a machi, every school holidays. But in spite of practicing meditation and even teaching meditation for about 20 years, suddenly one day she changed her religion, gave up Buddhism. What does that show? All that practice went down the drain. Why? Because she didn't have right view. So how to attain right view? To attain right view is to study the suttas. When you study the suttas and you get an understanding of the suttas, then you have unshakable confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And then you never change your religion. So that is the most important thing, to study the Buddha's words. If suttas were not important, the Buddha would not have bothered to preach for 45 years, to teach us 5,000 suttas. What for? If suttas are not important, maybe the Buddha just need to teach 1 sutta or 2 suttas. But he taught 5,000 suttas to make us see the suttas, to see the Dhamma from different angles. Every sutta explains the Dhamma from a different angle. So the more suttas we read, the more we see the Dhamma clearly from different angles. The other thing is that in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, after you have attained right view, you still need 5 things to support you to get liberation or arahanthood. The first one is sila, precepts. The second one is Dhamma Savanang, listening to the Dhamma. Third one is Dhamma Sakacha, discussion of the Dhamma. Fourth one is Samatha. Fifth is Vipassana. Now we know that the fourth and the fifth, Samatha and Vipassana, is meditation. So in addition to meditation, you still have 3 things you must cultivate in addition to right view. Sila, listening to the Dhamma, and discussion of the Dhamma. So you see, the knowledge of the Dhamma or the suttas is very important. You find during the Buddha's time, the Buddha's disciples, in the morning they go for pindabat, which is alms round. They go and beg for their food, they come back, they eat. After eating, they go into the forest to meditate. They spend the whole day meditating. When the sun will come to where the senior monk is, Venerable Sariputta or the Buddha, whichever is the senior monk, and they'll meet together after the sun sets to discuss the Dhamma. They will ask each other questions about the Dhamma, test each other the knowledge about the Dhamma, and if somebody does not understand, then the one who understands will explain the Dhamma. And even after attain arahanthood, they still discuss the Dhamma every night, which shows how important the Dhamma is. Now there's another sutta, the last sutta I like to quote, is in the Anguttara Nikaya. The Buddha said there are 5 occasions for attaining Aryahood. 5 times when you can become an Arya. The first one is when you listen to the Dhamma. The second one is when you teach the Dhamma. Third one is when you repeat the Dhamma. The fourth one when you reflect on the Dhamma. And the last one is during meditation. So of these 5 occasions when you become an Arya, only one is during meditation. The rest, the 4 things, the 4 other occasions have to do with the Dhamma. So a knowledge of the Dhamma is very, very important. So I hope you all if you practice meditation, not to neglect the suttas. And the original suttas of the Buddha are found in the earliest 4 Nikayas, the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Sangyutta Nikaya, and Anguttara Nikaya. If you have a knowledge of the suttas and you meditate to clear your mind so that you can understand the suttas better, then your chances of becoming an Arya are much greater. So I will stop here, and if you have any questions or comments, we will discuss. Actually, in the suttas, loving kindness, the Buddha said, to practice loving kindness, you should attain the first jhana first. Because the Buddha didn't say why, but if you don't attain the jhanas and you try to practice loving kindness, we can only try to, in the practice of loving kindness, the aim is to radiate loving kindness to other beings, But if you don't have that strength of mind, you're not able to radiate loving kindness to other beings. Even though you say, may all beings be well, may all beings be happy and all that, but other beings cannot feel it, cannot feel it. But if you have that strong mind and you radiate, it does go out. When I was young, I was in a Catholic school for many years. So the Christian brothers used to give us holy pictures. And I had a picture of a Christian saint, and with these birds coming and resting on his head, coming and resting on his shoulders, and flying all about him. Why? Because he had so much metta, and the animals can feel it. So it's different if you have samadhi. I don't know whether it's advisable or not, but it is possible. It's okay if you want to do that. But one thing you must remember, meditation is a long journey. It's a long spiritual journey. If you think you only meditate during retreats, then you won't make much progress. You have to meditate. If you want to make progress, you have to meditate every day. To find as much time as you can every day to meditate. If you can practice 1 hour each day, after 2 years or so, you find you make some progress. Meditation is a long distance run. It's not 100 meters dash. Sometimes in Penang, people say "Pia Xian, Pia Xian." If you want to do that, it's all right. It's all right if you can follow the breath. But for most people, it's difficult to see the breath going in all the way down there and up again. Besides, the breath is very fast. It goes in and goes out very fast. So it's quite difficult. Some teachers, they say, follow the beginning of the breath to the end of the breath. Of course, if you can do that, it's very good. But usually the breath is so short that it's very difficult. All you know is the breath goes in, the breath goes out. And that's enough. I think just now I mentioned if a person attains Sati Patana, it means that he has attained Jhana. So when a person attains Jhana, the mind becomes very strong. Like in the first Jhana, although some thoughts may still be there, but the thoughts are only connected with your meditation. They are not stray thoughts. For example, you may think, I must remember the steps that I took to attain this state of one-pointedness of mind. Because in the first jhana, you still have vitaka and vichara, applied and sustained thoughts. And only in the second jhana, then you don't have any thoughts at all. And in the second jhana, the mind becomes very strong. The mind becomes very, very strong, so that and very, very clear, so that no thoughts can possibly arise. impossible for any thoughts to arise in the second jhana. And yet the mind is very clear. And this feeling of piti and sukha is a very subtle feeling. It's not like in the Visuddhi Magga, they like to talk about overpowering piti and sukha and all that. But actually in the suttas, the Buddha said piti and sukha is a very subtle perception. So sometimes it's so subtle because you read in the other books, they say that the piti and sukha is overwhelming. Sometimes some people, they attain jhana and they don't realize that they attain jhana. But it doesn't matter, we keep on practicing. In the practice, in the spiritual path, we should not look for attainment. We should just keep on practicing. And the Buddha said that spiritual progress is a very gradual progress. It is not that you suddenly get knowledge, you suddenly get insights. Although the insights do come suddenly, it's just like a durian dropping, when the durian drops, it is sudden. But imagine how long it took the durian to grow after the flower has bloomed and then it became a fruit.